Good morning, Justice. How you doing?
Good morning, Six. I am doing phenomenally well. I went for like a long walk through Ojibwe Park this morning, and I'm feeling really good. That was a good choice. I made friends with a deer, and a bunny, and I saw lots of bunnies, but I also got bit by a lot of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
So,
You got to watch that West Nile virus too, eh?
am I gonna die?
Well, I don't know. We just got to make sure that we make it through this next half hour, I guess, and then we'll find out. We'll.
I can't hold on about that long. This morning, we are going live with one of my derby coaches. I know her as Boom, but more traditionally, she is known as Julia. So we will be talking with her about kind of what's going on with derby lately.
It's going to be maybe a short talk. I don't know. I mean, there's no real matches. But anyways, let's get into this afterwards. We're going to throw again on one of our more favorite ones of the AVB podcast with Billy Raffoul. And, oh shit, no, I screwed up my cousin. So this is Peter Raffoul. And, man, again, amazing. I love the piano in this.
You're watching the AVB podcast. Make sure to check out our sponsors.
Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Raffoul.
Back and forth, talking in circles, saying things that we don't mean. I lash out just to be hurtful, and you blame me for everything. Now you're in my face asking me why I can't be like the other guys. And I try, oh I try, but I've come to find that I love to leave and say goodbye. Tears in your eyes, saying one more try, honey, leave it behind. When will you realize I only love you when you leave me? I only miss you when you're gone. I only want when you don't need me. I only call when you're moving on. So baby, make it easy and don't pick up the phone. You smile when you see me, but baby, please don't hold on. You say this time that it will be different, but I can see it in your eyes. You say you and I can't do commitment. You say it's more you than I. And now you're in my face asking me why I can't be like the other guys. And I try, oh I try, but I've come to find that I love to leave and say goodbye. Tears in your eyes, saying one more try, leave it behind. When will you realize I only love you when you leave me? I only miss you when you're gone. I only want when you don't need me. I only call when you're moving on. So baby, make it easy and don't pick up the phone. You smile when you see me, but baby, please don't hold on. Don't hold on. And don't hold on to me. And don't hold on to me. don't hold on to me. Thank you, guys.
And we're back and live. Hi, Justice. And we are joined by Julia. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you, actually. This is the first time we've met.
Yes.
So because this is sort of the first time you and Six have met, do you mind giving us a little bit of a background on yourself? Sort of like what your day job is, how you got into Derby, sort of the whole kit and caboodle.
Sure. Yeah. No. I'm a children's mental health social worker. So I know we were just joking about talking. So yeah, I talk to people for a living, and I work with kids and I work with families, and I try to provide them the best mental health support they can get. And I ended up joining Derby at a time when I moved down to Windsor. I was in grad school and I didn't know anybody in this community. And I thought, what better way to meet people and kind of create a social network than to join a sport. I was commuting over the border. I did my my master's at Wayne State in Detroit, and a girl that I was commuting over with played at the time and was like, "Oh, I play this really neat sport. It's called roller derby," and I was like, "I need to be a part of that. Whatever that is,
Yeah.
I need to be joining it." I played contact sport growing up, so I played rugby. I did field hockey, which is not contact, but you end up making contact with people. So. I ended up joining this, and I've been in love with it ever since. I've been skating for probably 8 years now, which is wild to even think about.
That's pretty awesome. Where did you grow up playing? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Vaughan, so just
Okay.
north of Toronto, and then moved around a little bit. I did my undergrad in Waterloo, so I went to Laurier, and then eventually moved back to Vaughan for a year, and then applied out here to do my master's. And at that time, my dad and stepmom had lived out here, so kind of joined them. They gave me a place to live while I was doing the studying, and then now I've stayed here ever since.
Yeah, I was just wondering because like there's not a lot of communities with like things like field hockey teams and stuff like that. So you're obviously at a tipping point of having a large enough community or city to be doing that. That's pretty awesome. I grew up playing hockey. I played ice hockey. I was a goaltender from the time I was about 4 years old until I was maybe 16, 17, and then I kind of ruined my knees. I was a goaltender. It was horrible, bad stuff. So I stopped doing that, and then I started skateboarding when I was 27. That's what Justice and I were talking about the other day. So, I chose something else to kind of ruin my knees, but that's pretty cool.
That's quite a big leap to go from you're like hockey and then all of a sudden 27 skateboarding.
Yeah, and the funniest thing about it is the foot positioning, right? Because as a goaltender or as a hockey player or as a skater or as a roller blader, you're kind of feet forward, you're moving sideways and you're dealing with that. And then you go to skateboarding and then you're standing completely sideways. So I had a really tough time trying to figure out how to do tricks because as soon as my feet left the ground for an ollie, my body wanted to twist forward and land. And I'm now 47 and 20 years into my skateboarding career and still not a flip trick ollie guy. No.
But the effort is there, and that's all we have to appreciate.
Yeah.
Well, and that's funny too, because I feel like as an adult, or like, you pass 16, 18, whatever it is, and then you're like, what sports are there left to pick up? And if you didn't play like soccer, hockey, basketball, one of those kinds of like easily accessible sports that you can pick up later in adulthood, you're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So I feel like Derby also filled that void of still wanting to be in a team environment, but not really fitting into any of those other categories.
So for those who may not know, and also just for me again, because it's been a minute since I've been able to practice, can you sort of describe for like a layman what the rules and what the gameplay of Derby's all about?
Yeah, sure. So kind of a Coles Notes version. Typically you have a team of, let's say, up to 16 skaters on the track at any given time, which looks like an oval. So for anybody who's played hockey, the size of that would be about blue line to blue line. That oval inside, you have what's called a jam start line. That's where the two jammers, and they're indicated by stars on their helmet. Those are your two people that are going to score all your points. What they have in front of them is their teammates that are on the other side of that jam line, and that's 4 skaters from each team. The idea is that those skaters that are lined up there are called blockers. And the minute that whistle blows, those 2 jammers behind the line are now racing to get through that pack of skaters. Okay, so that's what the largest group of skaters on the track at the time is called. What happens is you're using your body to move through that pack. So that involves hip checks, shoulder checks, anything like that. All legally, of course, and there's a lot of technicalities to what that looks like. But basically, we're not like throwing bows or anything like that. You're using all the legal contact points, so your shoulders and your hips to get through. The first skater out of that pack, so the first jammer out, gets a lead jam status. They skate around, and once the other jammer is hot on their tail, that first lap around and going into the second lap, whoever passes, you pass hips. For every set of hips of the opposing team you pass, you get a point. So as you're skating around, you could be getting 4 points at a time, right, for all the opposing skaters you're passing. And you keep doing that for up to 2 minutes at a time. And then you shift your line.
Right on.
You know, my first introduction to roller derby was some 1970s or early 1980s film. I can't even remember it for the life of me, but man, there were elbows, and there was a lot of blood, and those women were just beating the crap out of each other. You know, and then fast forward quite a few years now, and I took my daughters last year out to one of your matches in Leamington. So, and it was the first time that I'd experienced kind of the local live roller derby, and my girls loved it. Christina Laurie is our connection with that. So, yeah, we were kind of out to support, but so fun. And, you know, the rules were really quick. My girls got it, you know, at that point, you know, 10 and 8. They can figure out what's kind of going on, and they loved it. They loved it.
Yeah, and I think it's evolved quite a bit from what you would have seen in the 80s, or like what my parents would have grown up with, which is like, you know, that 70s bank track kind of derby where you're like throwing people over railings. With, you know, like it was an incredible thing to watch, and it was entertainment and probably akin to wrestling and that kind of thing. So I think, right? So I think the derby community's come a long way to try to make it a very kind of like truly like athletic endeavor, and put a lot of rules in place to make it safer for people to play as well, and for people to be able to pick up. And I'm glad that you said that your girls were getting it kind of. I found that like most people about halfway through, you get to halftime and you're like, okay, I think I know what's going on. And then you have the second half to like really get into it. That's it, honestly. And the girls wanted to go to more of the games or matches, sorry. And, you know, obviously this year, I mean, Justice was starting out, little newbie, little green rollerblader. I don't know.
They call us freshies.
Well, you can call them whatever you want. Freshies, then it is. So she's kind of getting the hang of it, and we were excited to just go out and support you guys. So what's the state of that right now, and where do you see it kind of going in the next couple of months, or do you?
We're kind of in limbo, so we're at the mercy of quite a few different things. So the Women's Flat Track Derby Association, WFTDA, though we're not a part of that affiliation anymore, that's kind of the leaders in the community, and they're kind of the governing body that is actually putting action and plans into place for how Derby will pick up. So we're kind of taking their lead in some respect, and then also have to look at our own community and knowing that like we don't have practice venues right now, right? Community centers are remaining closed, rinks are remaining closed, all those spaces that we would typically take up, we're not allowed in anyways. We have been giving notice by the city that it's not looking like, certainly not before September, we're not going to be able to get into any of our venues yet. So I think once fall hits, it could look different. I think as long as we're able to keep our numbers down, we're going to be moving in a good direction. But it's kind of just looking at the health unit and what their recommendations are, and just kind of following provincial recommendations. We rely heavily on the US for support. So we play a lot of Michigan teams. We use a lot of the refs from Michigan, and I don't even know what that's going to look like for them being.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. I mean, this is a funny kind of game where people ask like, "Hey, how's it look?" And you gotta pretend you're the professional, or not professional, but you're an expert in kind of what's going on in your field. Like myself with our productions and stuff, I've been kind of looking through CAPIC, which is our kind of image maker guideline organization, and I mean their guidelines that they wrote were maybe amended in even mid-June. So like, now that we're all back to work, I'm wondering if there's going to be a new amendment to all of that too, with exactly how to go about stuff. But yeah, it's pretty crazy when you start looking at some of the guidelines and some of the health. You're kind of like, well, I don't know where this is going to go. So I'll put it out there. There's skate parks. There's a skate park here in Windsor.
Yeah, so we have a CIB crew, so Chicks and Bulls is a group of, and that not only do a lot of the skaters in our league participate in, but even the community. So there's certainly a derby presence at skate parks.
Yeah.
I've tried it myself, but you know what? I try really hard, and it's the same way that like you still maybe can't do all the tricks. I still can't do all the tricks, but I put my best effort into it. Yeah. But I know that we're trying to be as big of a presence outside as possible. But again, that comes with its own limitations. We can only do
especially right now
when we're on concrete.
As like somebody who is sort of just finding my feet on my wheels, like skating outside, the difference between skating outside and skating on the gym floor is exponential, because falling sucks, and I'm not very good at getting back up, and trying to get up off the concrete after the road burn it's not fun, and I miss the gyms for that reason. But how are you finding like the attitude from sort of the other team members are about kind of like continuing to skate outside and sort of trying to move forward that way?
I think we're trying our best. I think that we're putting it out there, and I know that we post in all our different Facebook groups and trying to get people to get outside and to be excited about getting outside. And just like Justice was saying, it's still intimidating, especially for our newer skaters who are just getting into our program, and we were just teaching them all those fundamentals.
Yeah.
I entirely encourage people to get outside and skate, but I also know that it comes and can be a little bit scary or intimidating.
Yeah.
So we've been doing, I think there was a couple times some of our trainers posted some even workouts off skates, just to kind of keep people using the same movements that you might do, stretching, just kind of trying to stay as fit as possible too right now. I noticed it in myself. It was a huge difference going from 2 practices and a game, to nothing. And my body hurts when I try to work out now.
Yes, I was going to the gym pretty steady too, and then the gyms, I mean, I didn't want to go into a gym. So then they closed after that. I don't know when I'll be back in, and yeah, body hurts a lot more. It's really weird how much just your regular movements and, I mean, just even like me getting out and skating with my little daughters and going out and skating and then falling and then having some, a few pains, and they're muscle pains. And man, when I was working out, they aren't that bad. You get through a lot more stretching and stuff like that. So
yes.
I want to.
And sorry.
No, you go ahead.
The heat's kind of a deterrent right now too. It's so humid outside, and I just don't want anybody to feel like they have to go outside and skate when it's not great breathing quality either. So just kind of a PSA on that.
That's totally fair. Yeah. So I'm interested a little bit in what you're doing in your professional life, and maybe how Corona or how this whole situation has affected some of the stuff that you're doing. Are you dealing with some families now, virtually, over this sort of thing? How is that right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of mental health agencies, kind of in a broader term around our community, really felt the impact of not being able to see clients face to face and see families and kids. That's made a huge impact on how we deliver services. But it's also now sparked a movement towards more a virtual type of support. And I think it's there's a benefit to it. I think that if we can keep this momentum going with virtual services, that actually alleviates some barriers for families in the future. So I think that we can get services out to more people. It's kind of a give and take, right? You have to depend on a family having maybe computers, cell phones, good internet access. But at the same time, if transportation was a limitation, this alleviates that barrier. So it might impose some new barriers, but might alleviate some other ones. I know right now we are opening up, like in terms of like a crisis call or a family that does need to come in. We are doing some face-to-face, but on a case-by-case basis. And I know adult mental health is feeling it as well, right? Like a lot of people are stuck between a rock and a hard place in getting services. So we're trying our best to adapt and trying to do video conferencing, even just phone, touching base with families and supporting them that way. So it's been a huge shift.
How are you mentally adapting, and how are you kind of holding up through it?
Big changes for myself as well. So at the time that COVID hit, I was actually redeployed to another part of the hospital that I work at. So I'm typically doing outpatient children mental health services. And then what happened was COVID hit and we stopped having visitors in hospitals and all that kind of stuff. So they actually redeployed a large amount of social workers from the outpatient services to working in inpatient. And actually we helped connect patients to families while we were there. So that was a very different environment. I was like visor, mask, gown, gloves, like going into patient rooms where they were testing on patients too. And luckily, like no COVID complications that we kind of saw while that was happening. So I was very grateful for that. And I was grateful to keep working. But it was for about 3.5 months, I did a completely different job, which was very strange, but ended up being amazing. And I made a lot of great connections and met a lot of really lovely patients, but just different because I was doing adults instead of kids.
What did you find that sort of the thing, like, was the vibe different in the inpatient community? Like, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're on a floor and you're working with a completely new interdisciplinary team, so you have doctors, psychiatrists, physiotherapists, like all of the different people that kind of form your circle of support when you're in an inpatient environment. That was a completely different team for me because I'm used to just my little group of social workers and, you know, we chat amongst ourselves and maybe work with a psychologist or psychiatrist. So this was a whole new like piece of the medical field that I hadn't experienced yet. So new skills out of it, yeah. But certainly scary off the get-go when you're just told one day, well, you're going.
Yeah, scary as shit walking into that. It's, you know, even going out into the public as I do, because I have not been into a hospital. My mother is fighting cancer and she's had to go up to London to a hospital. She's had to go into Leamington to the hospital as well. And, you know, it's crazy apocalyptic. It's like a film, like it feels like a film. You know, turning on the radio and just hearing, you know, always the counts and where we're at. And, you know, it's interesting times. Justice?
Yeah. No, that's, I was not 100% prepared to like go down the mental health track. So if like, it's cool, I bring it back to sort of derby stuff.
Do whatever you want to do.
I'm going to pull it back to derby stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of like what things were like starting out for you, like when you were a freshie, sort of what skills did you sort of struggle with? What did you excel at? And what was starting like for you?
I did not excel at a ton when I first started, as most people feel. You get into a brand new sport you're not used to. It's one where you have to learn all the rules because it's not like you didn't pick this up in gym class when you're growing up. So there's nothing to really base off of. So when I first started, I didn't have a ton of skating experience. So I was kind of like Bambi on fresh ice for a little while. I hadn't been used to even kind of like a speed skating stance, which we found ourselves in, and I didn't have a ton of endurance to do that. So that was a huge challenge, chronic back pain from having to skate laps. But eventually, you know, when you learn the movement and you learn how you should be engaging your core and yada, all that kind of boring stuff. But all of that helps when you're first starting out. Because I came from a contact background, hitting people didn't scare me. It was intimidating because you have to learn. I was like, it's okay.
I got this.
So when you're, once you get the skating part down and you feel stable, and then you can start doing some of the contact piece, that was where I found that I really could kind of hone in my skills. I don't want to use the term aggressive because I don't feel like it's an aggressive movement. I think it's a strong kind of strategic movement that I really developed a good skill in. I can skate, I can jam, but I tend to prefer to block because I just think that I'm stronger in that position, but I kind of am versatile and can go back and forth a little bit. I think we try to train as many skaters as we can to be able to do both.
Yeah.
We want to build your endurance so that in, worst case scenario, we got to throw you into that position. You're prepared for that.
Yeah, of course. What do you think, like, contact off wheels and contact on wheels? How did you find the difference there?
Difference in stability. When you're not on wheels, you feel a lot more grounded to when you're going to lay a hit. The hit is also different because of the different parts of your body that you're using in order to do that. In rugby, I'd go for a tackle around, I'd use my arms, I could tackle your hips, and then you would come down in a safe way. And this, I'm not using my arms, I'm using my hips likely. I'm having to get a lot lower in order to kind of, I'm also very short. So I have to get low and kind of use that to my advantage. And kind of lower my center of gravity in order to be stable enough to make that hit. And make it count and worth it. So
Yeah, everybody's a little bit skewed as far as our... Justice looks way smaller than you right now. You look like you could be tall. Justice looks like she's small. So, little pint size. I'm only 5'8", so when I was a goaltender in hockey, that was also one of the things that wasn't necessarily to my advantage, was my kind of average height. The more net you can get and there that you could cover, if you had a 6'3" goaltender, that'd be awesome. But I was just a little nimble guy. It worked for me when it did, but finding that position that works for you, eh?
I think the beauty of Derby is that, not to kind of be like, oh, it's such an amazing inclusive sport. We try to do that and we try to make it as inclusive as possible. And I think the beautiful part of it is that you can literally be any size.
Yeah.
If you're Justice's height, where I love how tall Justice is. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Like, let's use that height and that strength. I am here for it. But also you could be like 5'3", like me, and still be able to be a strong blocker, right? And it shouldn't matter. You can be kind of taller, shorter, as wide as is appropriate, as small as appropriate. It doesn't really matter. Every body type is appreciated, and everybody finds their skill set, and you learn how to use your body and all the things with it to your advantage.
Yeah, I'm not sure if my wife is still watching, but when she was thinking about doing roller derby, she was very wafy and thin. And this COVID has kicked her up a little bit. We might get her onto some rollerblades or roller skates. Sorry. Let's skip the whole roller blade issue. Roller skates. Maybe we'll get her into some contact sport. Maybe she won't be so afraid this year.
I think that's a great idea.
I think so.
I absolutely think Taryn should join Fresh Meat and absolutely hang out with
Fresh Meat? Is that what the group is called? Fresh Meat?
Well, yes and no.
It was the term that we used to use. We are trying to make it less. So as with everything, Derby is trying to change the language that we use, right? Yeah. So we're trying to get away with maybe some of the old stereotypes that we used to use. Yeah. So not kind of comparing skaters to meat, even though it is kind of a funny term. So we call it Derby 101 now.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, okay.
We'll hook her up to the 101 then, eh?
And that's where Freshie still kind of comes from, because we think that Freshie is still a gentle enough word to be able to.
I think so.
And it's cute.
It is cute.
I really have appreciated immensely sort of the support that has come from like specifically like the body positivity support that I've encountered from Derby, in that like there is like almost, I don't think I've met anybody yet who kind of comes from like a judgmental perspective. Like everybody showed up and was basically like, yeah, bodies are bodies, they're going to do what they're going to do. And that's been like super refreshing, because there absolutely is like such a diverse sort of cast of characters, even just on the vet team. And so like, I kind of want to ask one last like kind of quick question about like contact sports in general, and this understanding that like you're not sort of, all the data's not in front of you, but like in your kind of perspective, what do you think the future of contact sport will look like now that, you know, the whole world's a little scared of touching each other?
Yeah, that's the one piece that I'm quite nervous about, because that is what our sport is at the end of the day. If we all just raced around on roller skates, that's just speed skating at that point. It kind of takes the derby out of roller derby. So I think it's going to be a ways away from actually making contact with people. I know that WFTDA was proposing not even to consider having a full game, and this is like without spectators. So not even having a full bout, maybe till fall 2021, where they think it's going to be safe to actually be doing contact. So I think that's going to be that piece, right?
It's crazy. Think about the time.
It's going to sound silly to say like body fluids, but you know, you're sweating and you're breathing and all of those pieces. You can't expect people to wear a mask. That's not safe when you're having to play a sport. And I don't know. I can't say until, you know, we have better stats from even just like the higher powers that be, right? Government.
So with having a lot of that support, and I mean the camaraderie that you get through Derby, and literally that personal contact and personal connection that you guys have, not having that for the last little while, what are the things that you're kind of doing on a daily basis to keep yourself, you know, kind of a little bit positive, stay on the right track, and you know, move forward?
So I think it depends skater to skater. I know for myself, I live on my own as well. So when COVID first hit, that was a big hit to my kind of social network that I rely on to even just stay well for myself, and that's physically and mentally. So I think, you know, look, we're still having board meetings once a month, even though there's not a ton to report on, but we're still kind of doing our obligatory checks to make sure, you know, checks and balances, that the league is still up and going where it needs to be. I know my counterpart, Lula, is doing an incredible job trying to be like that social media presence on all of our Facebook pages for our other skaters in the league. I know that we've been able to gather some folks to go out to even some of the protests that were happening, and just kind of any opportunities where we can kind of gather outside in a safe way, especially ones that have a great impact and can kind of make a difference in our community. But to the same token, I understand that if people need to stay away and they need to be safe, that's okay too. I know when I was in the hospital, I was trying to keep distance. I think as we kind of move to a better place where we're now allowed to kind of interact with more people, I think that's going to be better for being able to bring more of us together. I know people were posting workouts and having people join by Zoom chat for a little bit too. So even just little things like that, if it's either Zoom meetings, getting together with, you know, maybe some of the people that you've created a connection with in Derby. I think that's the social piece, aside from the sport, is such a huge part of roller derby.
Very much.
And even as like a larger community, right? We're used to being able to go, we should have had 3 games by now. We should have been able to take justice to Two Fresh, which is a tournament in Toronto that happens every year for our fresh skaters. We even think to the fall where there's huge tournaments that happen, just like recreational tournaments in the States that we know aren't going to happen this year. So even in the larger scale, like the Derby community is kind of feeling distance.
Wow. It's awesome that you guys are still kind of working towards the idea of keeping things going and moving forward, you know, positively, because I see what, you know, Derby has kind of done in Justice's life. You know, and I know it through, you know, the kind of fun, it's team sport. So it's really good to see that you guys are still kind of working on a foundation and looking to see something happen, and that you're still positive, you're still smiling, even with the heavy job that you're doing in life. So
Thank you.
I appreciate the time. It's been great, and it was really nice to meet you, and I hope one day we can be watching one of your matches.
I hope so too. And it was a real pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on, and I hope I answered as many questions as I could for you guys.
No, absolutely. We were. Hopefully, those who are watching have a better understanding of Derby. I'm very excited and glad to know that you guys are still moving forward and the future is in focus. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you to everybody who was watching at home. And we will be back tomorrow morning.
Hopefully, yeah. Take care, guys. Bye.